Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this fine Monday night. This is Rick Seymour. My wife and I, Aldana, have been Shackley ambassadors for 51 years. I think that officially qualifies me as an antique at this point. But tonight we're going to share on three things that are all interrelated and all critically important to our health. So if you give me just a moment to set this up, we will be ready to go. So we're going to talk about how to live age-free and live younger longer. And specifically, we're going to talk about protein, leucine, creatine, and cellular energy and how all of that plays together. So when we look at this subject, one of the first things we have to talk about is muscle. Dr. Gabriel Lyon says, muscle is the organ of longevity. And it is. It supports your metabolism, your balance, long-term independence. It's the fuel, protein is the fuel that builds lean muscle, and strategic protein intake is crucial to our overall health. So let's look and see what the problem is, because we lose significant muscle as we age. At 30, we're doing quite well, but at 40, we probably lost 3 to 8%. By 50, 10%. By 60, 15, and by 80, 40%. If you look on the right, the symptoms are quite obvious. And we're beginning to see people in their 60s in assisted living homes because of this phenomena. And you got to wonder what the heck is going on. Well, it should be pretty obvious that the protein intake, which is what builds muscle, is nowhere near what it should be. The RDA on the left in the red is 55 to 65 grams a day. That's what the FDA has said for decades, but that's just the minimum required to prevent a significant deficiency. The optimal intake, what we understand today, is 100 to 130 grams a day. That's basically double what the RDA is, because that's what it takes to support our muscle, our metabolism, recovery, longevity, and all of it. And if you look on the right, the typical American intake for most adults is only 60 to 70%, fall way short of optimal protein intake on a consistent basis. That is scary when you think about it, because the RDA will prevent a deficiency, but optimal protein intake is what it takes to protect muscle, your metabolism, your independence, and have healthy aging. So if our goal is 100 grams of protein a day, you will discover that's a lot. It turns out that a 200-pound man really needs 130 to 150 grams a day. And those of you who have paid attention and tried to figure it out realize 100 grams a day is very difficult to achieve, given the typical kinds of foodstuffs that we eat, unless you're very, very intentional about that. Well, here's the challenge. It's not just the amount of protein you eat. You also have to have adequate leucine with every single meal. Most people strive, if they're serious about this, to get 30 grams of protein in a meal. But if there isn't at least 2 to 3 grams of leucine, one of the amino acids that is critical, it will not trigger muscle growth. So you can eat lots and lots of protein and still not build muscle if you're not paying attention. And it turns out that most plant proteins do not have adequate leucine to trigger muscle growth. So those of you who know people who are vegetarians, people who tend toward plant-based proteins of most kinds, you're going to find that they're going to have a real challenge building any kind of muscle over the long term. Now, Shackley has a zillion different options in protein. There are some plant-based proteins, but they are enhanced with leucine. We've got snack bars and meal bars and creatine and collagen and life shakes and all of that good stuff. But I'm going to focus tonight on Shackley's. So one of the things that I think is so extraordinary about this program is that when you look at the results in the clinical study, 100% said they were satisfied with the results. 94% said their cravings for unhealthy foods decreased. We're going to come back to that in a little bit. 82% said they felt full and satisfied after meals. 71% said their digestive health improved, and over 65% said their energy, mood, and focus improved. Those are pretty dramatic results. And when you look at the average weight loss and inch loss, that's something to be kind of semi amazed for a 5-day reset. Now, we have on the call with us tonight somebody who has done this. Terry is going to join us here in just a moment. And here is somebody who's run 19 marathons, run 6 miles every day just for fun, and has been doing that for decades.
No matter the weather.
No matter the weather. And I've asked her to join us. And Terry, if you would unmute, tell us what your experience with the 5-day reset has been.
Well, I did it, before I did it, I was feeling like, sluggish. And it was after the holidays. And a few months before, I had lost my mom. And, I just felt, ugh. So I was real anxious to do it. And so when we started, Bruce and I did it together, and which I think really helps. But when we started, almost like within the second day, I noticed that when I would go out to run, I felt stronger. I didn't feel like, oh, could my legs just go run for me, and I'll sit this one out. Um, I didn't feel that way. But what I did notice is how hard it is to get 100 grams in a day. But doing the reset, I felt energetic. I felt stronger running, and I never felt hungry because, like you said earlier, you're eating or drinking something almost every hour to every 2 hours. That's a lot going in you, but you feel good that you're eating or drinking good stuff. And I'm going to do it again. I already ordered another kit because in about a month or so, we're going to Florida to see my brother. But it's been basketball season and we kind of eat crazy and all that kind of thing. So I'm kind of anxious to do it again because I felt so good while I was doing it. And Bruce did too. Yeah.
Terry, thank you for that. I mean, for somebody
Yeah.
that's in the phenomenal condition you are, that can see that kind of result, imagine what the rest of us are going to see if we stick to that and actually do something like that we're supposed to do. So let's transition now and talk about creatine for a minute because it is totally wrapped up in your energy cycle. Yes, we got to have muscle. And yes, we need lean muscle to age properly and age well. And that affects not just your physicality, but your mental health. But you also have to figure out how am I going to give those muscles a lot of energy so that I feel good, like Terry was talking about. So what I want you to think about here is that there is a thing called ATP, which is basically your body's battery, and it powers your muscles and your brain. It helps you move, focus, make decisions. It regulates your heartbeat. It even supports cellular repair. So every time that you think or walk or lift something or heal or try to manage stress, you're using up ATP. And yes, it's like your body's battery, but what happens when you get like a low battery on your cell phone? Things are not functioning quite as well because your body is constantly rebuilding ATP from the nutrients in your food, assuming you have a good diet, which again, we're going to talk about. But during times of high demand, like exercise, stress, recovery, or guess what? Aging is kind of high demand. You burn through it faster. Well, here's the cool thing about creatine. It's not just for your muscles. We've heard about it for years. Bodybuilders have been using it forever. It does some amazing things when it comes to muscle. But in terms of your energy cycle, it's even more important because it's like a rapid charger for your ATP. It's like you take your iPhone and you slap it on one of those chargers that boom, in 10 minutes, it's done. Well, it'll quickly recharge the ATP, not just for short bursts of strength, but it will support mental clarity, resilience, and recovery from exercise. And without adequate creatine, your system still works, but energy production is much less efficient, can be very slow, and both physical and mental performance can feel dramatically diminished. But Shaklee's creatine isn't just creatine. Most of the products on the market are just creatine, but ours contains polyphenols, it contains magnesium, so it not only helps generate energy and recharge, but it activates it over a longer period of time. And what we find from the clinicals is that people have sharper focus and mental clarity. They have steady all day energy, not just a quick burst of energy, strong memory and organization, better stamina, and faster recovery between activities. And here's the clinicals that kind of blew me out of the water. 88% said their energy during low times, like that mid afternoon slump, are improved. 84% said their ability to get through daily activities improved. 75% said getting an energy boost when needed improved. 78% said focus and mental clarity improved. And that's a big one, especially when you get into that afternoon slump. 78% said their brain fog improved. 59% said their ability to remember where they put items like their keys, their phone, and their wallet improved. And I know there's a few of us on this call that that's pretty significant. And 78% said their ability to work out longer or harder improved. So this is not inconsequential stuff. So we have to be concerned about muscle requiring protein and adequate leucine to build lean muscle mass, but creatine will help us have the energy to use those muscles properly. Now, let's kind of wrap something else into the topic because this we've talked about for decades, and now it's even hitting the media in very significant ways, and that's the American diet problem. I call it SAD, the standard American diet, because the challenge is with diets today, there's all kinds of stuff that we do because of lifestyle that we probably know we shouldn't be. But let me just ask you, how many of you skip meals? How many of you eat on the run? How many of you have had a meal over the kitchen sink this week? Do you eat in fast food restaurants? Maybe a little too often. And how many times a day do you put something in your mouth and say to yourself, I probably shouldn't do this, but you do it anyway? The reality is that that probably describes a good share of us. And I'd be willing to bet that 90% of the people in this country would have to answer yes to at least one of those questions. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's two or three or all five. So we know that just from lifestyle choices, we have a challenge. But the challenge is even worse because many consumers eat lots and lots of calories, but low nutrient foods. They have large portions of refined carbs, sugars, industrial seed oils, and a very low intake of quality protein, fiber, vitamins, and minerals. On the news this morning, they reported that 21% of children are obese, not overweight, they are obese. And 60% of their diet is coming from ultra processed foods. That is a time bomb ready to explode. If you think we have health issues in this country today, you ain't seen nothing yet. You wait until this generation of kids becomes adults, and man, it's going to be a serious, serious problem. So you have to recognize that most Americans' diets fall short in key nutrients, things like omega-3 fatty acids, digestive support, and all the nutrients we know are essential for good health. And we know that nutritional supplementation can support that and fill in the gaps. But one of the points I want to make is that consistency beats intensity every single time. Consistency over 50 years for Aldana and I has made a huge difference in our health. And one of the things that Shaklee has done that makes them the only company in the world with independent clinical proof that their supplements actually build health over the long term is a study done over 30 years with UC Berkeley School of Public Health and Tufts University. And what they discovered in this study is that they started tracking people at about age 30 because we all think, and to some degree, you're kind of bulletproof till we're about 30, but that's when our bad habits start to show up. And by 50, there's a big spike in those bad habits. And what they have shown is that people that take no supplements or just a multivitamin, 30% of the population has serious physical problems like heart disease, stroke, diabetes, emphysema, etc., by the time they get into their 70s and 80s. And people who take lots of supplements, that middle line right there, but not Shackley, about 20% of that population has serious physical ailments as they age, which means they're going to be dealing with a lot of disease, doctors, drugs, and a lot of money dealing with all that. But what they discovered was that the Shackley population, this green line down here, in their 70s and 80s, the Shackley population, less than 10%, had serious physical issues when they got into those decades of the life. Now, what that says is that people who take no supplements or a multi only have 3 times as many health issues as the Shackley population as they age. And people who take lots of supplements, but other brands besides Shackley, have twice as many health issues as they age than the Shackley population. That is huge. And Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn, who won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2009, says the Shackley population is remarkably healthier than the general population, as shown by these 2 studies, the landmark study on long-term nutritional supplement users and the telomere study. Again, Shackley is the only company with clinical proof that their products actually work. Now, as a result of that study, they went back to all the Shackley people and said, what are all you crazy people taking that makes you so healthy? And instead of us not having to open 15 or 20 bottles every morning like we used to, they basically created this little packet right here. And no, that is not life size, just so you know. It's much smaller than that. But those 6 tablets and capsules contain over 80 different nutrients that are the things that made the Shackley population so healthy. It is one of the most comprehensive foundational nutritional programs on the market, and we highly recommend it to anybody and everybody. So if you want to live younger longer, here's the big picture. You have to support cellular energy with smart nutrition, continuous strategies and routines that are consistent over time. You must prioritize protein and make sure that there's adequate leucine with that protein to trigger muscle maintenance and building. We can encourage people to start with that 5-day protein reset because it does several things. What Terry described, but it literally resets your metabolism so that you have a better start whenever you decide to get on a good nutrition program. Creatine for rapid energy and focus, and build a daily nutrient foundation that supports strength, focus, and longevity. And to make that even more reasonable for anybody that has never really been exposed to this, has never really had a basic nutrition program, they put together what they call the Vital Life Stack. It is daily essential nutrients in this little packet, and a life shake, which is a smoothie that we've had for breakfast every morning for 51 years. It is very comprehensive, not quite as thorough as Vitalizer is, but it's an awesome place to start somebody brand new who's never really done this kind of thing before. And they put it in a price bracket that makes it pretty darn reasonable for the average person. In other words, a complete meal and adequate nutrition for less than $5 a day. So with all of that, I hope that you came away understanding and learning something from this, and recognize that there's plenty of people out there, the people who invited you to this call, who are more than willing to answer questions and help you achieve your optimum health.